Pierce Brosnan wasn't meant to be broken. He was a beloved actor, a cool leading man, and an international icon. Not him, not the man who would become James Bond. But behind the calm voice and sure smile was a soul that was slowly falling apart. Keely didn't like him when she first met him. The spark wasn't there for her. In fact, she later came right out and said it. I really hated him. What happened next, though, would make everything different. Keely didn't just fall in love with Pierce Brosnan. She gave up her whole identity, her future, and the attention. All of this was done to save a man who everyone else thought had moved on. No one really knew what she gave up to do it for almost 30 years. It starts a long time before Keely came along. Pierce Brosnan lost the love of his life, Cassandra Harris, in 1991. Harris was an actor in her own right, and the woman he used to date. She died of ovarian cancer after a hard 4-year fight that Pierce called his North Star. She was only 43 years old. Pierce met her in the late 1970s. She already had 2 kids, and Pierce took them in as his own. They had one more child together, and Pierce often said that being with Cassandra made him feel whole. That unity broke when she died. Suddenly, the rising star actor wasn't just sad about losing his wife. Being a single parent to 3 kids, he was full of sadness and tried to keep them from going through the same heartbreak that had broken him. The movie business didn't slow down for him. He had projects to work on and press to do. Some people said he could be the next James Bond, but behind the scenes, he was barely getting by. After many years, Pierce said in a rare interview, "When your partner gets cancer, life changes. Your plan, your books, and everything else you value changes all the time. You change into someone else. Hold on tight." He didn't just hold on after Cassandra died either. He held on to the pieces. Friends say he shut down and became more shy. Even though he went on press tours, openings, and wrote scripts, he was still stuck in that hospital room with a woman he couldn't save. Even though his career was taking off, he wasn't really James Bond until 1994. His private life stayed a hollow echo. People liked and admired him, but there was something missing from the look in his eyes. A close friend of his once said, "I didn't know if I'd ever feel whole again." That's the person Keely Shaye Smith met. In a suit, he wasn't the handsome movie star or the classy Bond. He was a father, a widower, and a man whose heart had been torn out and put back together with silence. In the autumn of that same year, she met him at a beach party in Mexico. It was crashing on the ocean. The champagne was pouring. Mixing, joking, and flirting were going on. Pierce was also there to play the part. But Keely saw right through it. He was cut off. She felt like he was too far away from her once. Yes, charming, but hurt. That made some of me angry. I didn't like how his sadness protected him. I didn't want to get involved with that. This is shocking because Keely wasn't a fan of Starrick or a young engine. She was a well-known and respected TV reporter and environmental reporter. She had talked to famous people, reported from hurricanes and wildfires, and worked on unsolved riddles and tonight's entertainment. There was a man in front of her that everyone loved, but she couldn't reach him. She had a job, goals, and momentum. Even though she was sad, she didn't leave because she knew there was a guy below the grief. You could say that Keely Shaye Smith made a name for herself before she became Mrs. Brosnan. No, not behind the scenes or as someone's partner. She needs to be in charge of her job, her image, and her path. She was everywhere in the late 1980s and early 1990s, modeling, reporting, and making movies. She was one of a kind because she was both charming and poised like a reporter. She wasn't just reading from a script. She was looking for true stories, news on natural disasters, interviews with famous people, and environmental stories. He wasn't afraid to tell the truth even when things were crazy. She was already well known from Unsolved Mysteries and Entertainment Tonight before getting big roles on ABC and NBC. There was even some quiet chatter on the networks. There were directors who thought she had the skills and personality to be a full-time national anchor, but Key had other ideas. She wanted to do work that was important, and she never sought fame just for the sake of it. That's likely why P.S. Brosnan didn't impress her. Because a tuxedo and a smirk are hard to take in when you're used to fire lines, oil spills, and camera teams in the jungle in the real world. Still, something changed that night in Mexico on the beach. When everyone stopped laughing and the people thinned out, P.S. stayed behind, dark, quiet, and far away. Keely was getting ready to leave by getting her things together. She thought twice when she saw him standing there by himself, looking out at the ocean. She walked back even though she knew she shouldn't have because something was pulling at her. After that, he spoke. He didn't flirt. He was not nice. He said, "I haven't been here since Cassandra died." It was like a drop of rain hitting glass as the name came out. He wasn't sure what to say. She wasn't used to being caught off guard. She learned how to stay calm on camera during talks on set. That time, though, it wasn't about being in charge. It had to do with the truth. She sat down, and they talked. You don't write about movies or fame. You write about grief, parenting, losing a loved one, and feeling like the world stopped every morning and no one noticed. Afterward, Key said, he was broken. And that was real and raw. He wasn't trying to make me like him. He was real. They talked for hours, and she felt something soften inside. Though not quite love yet, they understand each other. She called her boss the next morning and asked to change the time of her next task. She told herself that she needed a day or two to clear her mind. But she said that was the first thing I let go of when we talked about it again. It was my plan, my routine, and it wouldn't be the last one. P.S. and Keely started to spend more time together after that. It was quiet time, with no red carpets or press. They went for walks on the beach, ate dinner at home, and played with their kids. Over time, the walls between them started to fall down. He started turning down travel jobs. In terms of network work, she pulled back. L.A. is no longer home to her. People around her were shocked. She was even told by one director, "Keely, you're melting into him. You had a job and a name." At first, Pierce looked like he was sad, but Keely didn't move because she saw a man trying to build a life from the ruins. She also knew that if I left, he might not try again. It wasn't easy, though. There were times when they were alone, silent, and felt like ghosts from the past were creeping into the present. P.S. kept Cassandra's memory close even after she died. On the job, he still talked about her and wore his sadness like a second skin. And for a woman who had just quit her fast-rising job to be with him, that wasn't a light load. Keely cried by herself some nights, wondering if she had made the right choice and if she would ever be more than a ghost's body. She didn't stay because it was easy, though. She did it because she knew who he really was. P.S. saw what she was doing and what she was giving up over time. She loved more than just me. She saved me, he said one time. He first thought she could have love and work at the same time. She dreamed of a time when she could be in charge of big news during the week and spend the weekends with Pierce and the kids. But sadness doesn't wait for the weekend, and healing doesn't happen at set times. Within the first year of dating Pierce, her goals changed in a way that was both quiet and clear. The producers saw this. Calls were not answered. Auditions were turned down. Anchor jobs were given to other people. Not that Keely wasn't qualified, but because she wasn't free. It wasn't just time either. It had to do with power. Because loving Pierce Brosnan at that point in his life wasn't something that was done for fun. He was still sad about the death of his wife. Still putting kids to bed who asked for their mother. Still feeling guilty, alone, and afraid that it might happen again. He didn't just start a relationship when she came into his life. She filled a need by taking care of, stepmothering, supporting, and protecting a family that had already lost a lot. In the beginning, she would be making dinner in the kitchen when one of the kids would walk in with a picture of Cassandra and ask her questions. They needed support and wanted to know who would be there when the next tragedy happened. That wasn't what Keely was expecting. Who could be? She wasn't their mom. She wasn't even really a family member yet. She did give them what she could, though: kindness, presence, and steadiness. At the same time, she was quietly and unnoticeably giving away something else: who she was. Because Hollywood moved on without her the longer she stayed. Someone else got the job at Good Morning America. Because she was working on a nature documentary series, she could only do rare side projects for her environmental journalism job. A network official told another executive that Key was a rising star because she was poised, smart, and interesting. Our plans called for her to show up, but she never did. That's how it looked from the outside. On the inside, though, something completely different was going on. Healy was making a new life for himself, one without the lights, the news, and his ego. She and Pierce finally moved to a house with trees and less noise, away from the paparazzi. They got married and had 2 sons of their own. He started gardening, took up photography, and worked to protect the ocean. Slowly, she let go of the things that used to define her. She did it because she wanted to, not because she had to. After many years, she said, "I never made a formal decision to step away." But you know what's important when you love someone who's been through that much. People outside still didn't get it. As Pierce's fame grew as he starred in hit films, won awards, and fully embraced his part as 0007, some reporters started to wonder, who is this woman next to him? Why doesn't she also try to be a star? Why isn't she trying to get attention? Not only did some media question her drive, they also questioned her worth. Some articles called her boring, heavy, and unfit for Bond, saying that she didn't look like James Bond. It was mean, unfair, and showed a lack of understanding for all she had already given up. She didn't say anything, though, because the noise didn't bother her. It didn't matter about the cams. The recognition, the fame, and the red carpet invites were not as important as the fact that she was doing something holy and important. She was putting together a man and a family that had every reason to fall apart again. She had to do it, even if it meant giving up the future she had once imagined. The most interesting thing about her was that she never asked for anything in return. There was no praise, no stage, and no thanks. There was only love, healing, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing she gave everything to someone who needed it the most. Keely's efforts were kept secret for a while. Her love life wasn't being talked about in public. She wasn't building a brand or writing autobiographies. During premieres, family trips, and long stretches of silence, she did nothing but stand next to the man she loved, but the world always had its own thoughts. And in Hollywood, where looks are everything, Keely Shaye didn't fit the story they wanted to tell about Pierce Brosnan. As Bond, the man in the tuxedo with the grin and the martini, he was really hot. All of a sudden, a woman who didn't look like a beauty showed up next to him. A woman who had aged gracefully over time, but not with surgery or the focus on her. She wasn't dressed for the red carpet. Her picture wasn't taken by the press. They didn't think she would play the part. The press then attacked her. She was called frumpy on magazine covers. Online news sites asked Pierce Brosnan why he would stay faithful to someone like her. The headline said, "Wife of Pierce Brosnan lets herself go." On social media, meme before and after pictures of Keely from 1995 and Keely now were shared, as if getting older were a failure. It never stopped. He never fought back either. Pierce did it for her, so she didn't have to. In comments he said, "Grace and then fire." To the news stories, he told the press, "I love her curves. She's the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. Over the years, she gave me a lot of strength. I can't stand to let her down." When critics spoke out again, P.S. went even further. "She is the mother of my children," he replied. "I love her very much. I wouldn't change a thing about her, and people who don't get that don't understand love." He stood up for her in public too. He told everyone loudly, and without shame, that Keely was everything to him. The story changed after that because the world saw something very rare. A man who had money, fame, and respect, but clung to the woman who was there for him when he didn't have any of those things. They saw loyalty that you don't see very often in Hollywood. A strong dedication to the person who went through the fire with him. The people who had made fun of Key were now praising her. She became a quiet figure of honor, showing how to age well, love without expecting anything in return, and handle the attention of the world without losing who you are. But she really didn't want to be praised. Her only goal was to love Pierce Brosnan. Years later, Key was asked why she didn't say anything, why she never fought back, why she never blocked the mean stories. She simply replied, "I didn't need to be seen. It was enough for me to be there." More people shut up than any news release ever could with that one sentence. It wasn't about fame at all. It was never about how it looked. It was always about him and the quiet family they built together. If Pierce Brosnan thought that the worst pain in the world was over, he was wrong. He was wrong. Because in 2013, more than 20 years after losing Cassandra Harris, he would lose her daughter, Charlotte, to ovarian cancer, the same disease that killed her mother. Once more, it was mean. It wasn't kind. For Pierce, it was a wound that brought up the deepest parts of his sadness again. Again and again. Charlotte was only a little girl. When Cassandra died, P.S. raised her as his own child and helped her through school, sadness, and motherhood. She had 2 children of her own by the time she died, at the age of 41. The news broke his heart. In a statement at the time, P.S. said, "My dear daughter Charlotte Emily died of ovarian cancer on June 28th at 2 p.m. and went to live with God forever and ever." Her husband, kids, uncles, and friends were all around her. With grace, kindness, courage, and respect, Charlotte fought her cancer. But what he didn't write, and the news didn't say, was that Keely was with him the whole time. Because Pierce was almost ruined by Charlotte's death, just like Cassandra's death had. As for his friends, he stopped picking up the phone. He completely pulled away. He turned down work. He didn't leave the house for long. The woman who had already given up her life to be his was the only one who stayed close during that time. He was his wall, his safe place, and his voice when he didn't have any more. Even though she was also sad, she made sure that everyone in the house who was grieving felt safe by cooking meals for them and taking care of Charlotte's kids when they needed it. She also dealt with the press and stopped the photographers. Because Charlotte wasn't just his kid. She had been married to Keely. In typical Keely way, she had raised her, loved her, and cried for her. It wasn't about her. She did not make a comment. People didn't talk to her. She didn't say anything and just stayed there. It was something P.S. will never forget. When asked about Keely months later, P.S. said, "He has been my North Star. She was my rock when things were dark. I was able to keep going because of her." He did keep going. It's not because the pain went away. It doesn't ever. But because the woman next to him wouldn't let him fall apart. The attention was already off of her. She was now giving him her strength. It wasn't the first time either. He was with him when both of his parents died. When his career took a turn for the worse and reporters made fun of his looks, his weight, and his family. She stayed during the quiet disasters. Not the ones that make the news. The ones that get deep inside you and say, "You're alone." But he wasn't alone because she was always there, even when people didn't believe her or questioned it. Not only is she the love of my life, but she's also a big name in her field. P.S. said, "She's the reason I still have a life." And now you know why P.S. Brosnan, who is good-looking, well-known, and loved, stayed with the same woman for so long. Because she came, not for the big events or the attention, but for the tough times, the real ones. The kinds of times that show who someone really is. She gave him her peace of mind, her time, her strength, and most of all, her life. She never asked for anything in return. She didn't say anything for more than 20 years. Not autobiographies, exposes, or carefully chosen Instagram posts. Just being there with the man she loved through loss, criticism, and every other situation that could have broken them both. They were married for 20 years before Keely finally told them everything. Not in a magazine spread or a video that goes viral, but in a private charity event where they said some quiet, meaningful things. Anyone who knew her asked her what it was like to be married to a film star. She smiled in a shy way and said, "It wasn't the fame that interested me. It was the sadness and the quiet. I couldn't leave when I saw something broken." After a short pause, she said, "I didn't plan for this life, but I choose it every day." That was the first time she told everyone in public how much she had given up. Her plans, her job, and her freedom. It wasn't said with anger either. It wasn't a complaint. It was the truth. Still, quiet, and unmistakable. Pierce was clearly upset as he stood next to her. He looked at her in a way that not many people ever get in public. Yes, with love, but more than that, with thanks. He later said, "She gave me a place to live again, and a reason to get up in the morning. I owe her a lot more than I can ever pay back." And people around the world began to notice what many had been missing for years. That Keely was more than just the star's wife. He was able to stand because of her. Why he could smile while walking down red carpets. Why he could handle another occasion without Charlotte or Cassandra and not lose it. Because there may be a woman behind every strong man. But there was a woman behind P.S. Brosnan who gave up everything to help him start over. In later talks, P.S. said the same thing again. "I've loved two incredible women in my life," he stated. "Cassandra gave me my first family and love, and she also gave me Keely." That quote spoke to me. Fans all over the world shared it. It was romantic, but not in a way that would fit in a movie story. It was romantic because it was real. A broken, sad man who said that the only thing that had saved him wasn't money or fame, but a woman who saw his pain and loved him anyway. And in a world that often makes youth, perfection, and star dreams seem cool, P.S. and Keely's story turned into something different. A story about love and suffering, about a woman who hid the man who was in the spotlight to protect him, and never asked to switch places. She was never the Bond girl. She was never in the news. It was never her who was after the camera. She was the one who stayed, saw the wreckage, and still made a house out of it. Who didn't run when they heard his silence. Keely Shaye Smith loved more than just Pierce Brosnan. She gave up everything for him, and never once asked anyone to notice. They finally have. Watch this movie to learn more about the morning news.